It's cold in here. Team memo to that.
I hope everything's right on here.
Good evening. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda? Megan, second Henry. Any questions? All in favor? 6-0. Mr. Poole, Superintendent's report.
Thank you, President Anderson. Good evening. Welcome, everyone. Welcome Miller Avenue students and their families. Awesome artwork out there on display this evening. I want to start off with a great big congratulations to all of our student musicians who performed at the high school this past Thursday and Monday nights. Such amazing performances of complex pieces. You could just see the pride in our students and in our staff in what they were able to put on the stage over the last week or so. Just really, really wonderful. Special thank you to Miss O'Connor, Mr. Crichton, and Mr. O'Brien. You could just see their passion for music, and our student success was really, really, really evident. It was very, very cool, unique, where the orchestra yesterday evening played a piece composed by an Eric Davis, and in fact, the composer had come to the district the week before and had worked with students on how the piece should be played from the composer's perspective. So just great experience, and you could hear it in the performance. I do want to make a note, too, that 4 of our high school students will be participating in the 3rd Long Island Regional Virtual Student Forum. This virtual forum will take place in March 25th and give our students the opportunity to share their thoughts and viewpoints on a number of important topics to students related to education, social and emotional health, readjusting to in-person learning. I know we had students go last year and they connected with students across Long Island about education and their experiences in school. So looking forward to having those students go as well. In celebration of National Foreign Language Week, our upper-level Spanish students, AP students, will be attending an assembly highlighting the cultural art of flamenco dance coming up next week. And congratulations to our Shoreham-Wading River High School student artists. We have some artists here this evening who participated in the All-County and Senior Scholarship Show through the Suffolk County Art Leaders Association, and several students involved were Carolyn Lang, Anna Marino, and Megan Thrash, and senior Lauren DeRosso won 3rd place in the senior scholarship portion of the show, and that's for all of Suffolk County. So congratulations to those students. I want to make a note too. I always give a shout out to our student journalists. The print edition of the Wildcat Pause, the next edition is out. It's also available online. Great paper, great writing. Some of our students won a Quill Award on one of the recent articles. They'll be coming to a board meeting to be recognized. But I want to give special mention to Sarah McAuliffe, who wrote a really important article. Her article was called Supporting SWR Students, Know Your Resources. And in the article, she really advises students to really know what are the mental health and social supports that are in the high school for them to take advantage of. And she makes a pitch out to district administration to do more to make more students aware of what we have in the school district. We've added to the program. It's robust. We have lots of opportunities for students. So, Sarah, I'm doing this because of your article. We have a lot of resources for mental health. Students, if you're listening, or families, please reach out to the building. We have a lot of help for students in the school district in that area. At the middle school, this past week, what a wonderful job from our middle school students who performed the Scamia Festival. Many of our music educators served as chairs for that countywide event. The middle school, very shortly, their theater program's up and running. They're going to perform Fame Junior. That's coming up at the end of March. Rehearsals and set building is underway. Students are really very excited. We've had some great theater performances so far this year. I'm looking forward to going to that as well. And the middle school had a Women's History Assembly on March 3rd. Many thanks to the staff there for putting it together. Some guest speakers, really important women in our county, Suffolk County Medical Examiner's Office, and also a Desert Storm Marine veteran. They shared their stories of perseverance and struggle. Some great musical ensembles as part of that presentation as well. Just give another shout out to Wading River SRO. Beauty and the Beast was absolutely magical. Many thanks to Mr. Paranello, that tireless producer of that. Wading River's Science Fair, while I'm on that, is happening tomorrow night, Wednesday, March 9th from 6:30 to 8. High school students mentor young scientists during the day and will be judging the projects in the evening with students from St. Joseph's College, who will also be there as well to conduct special presentations for that. Just a few accolades for our sports program. Shoreham-Wading wrestlers Tristan Petretti and Craig Chablonsky placed 5th and 8th, respectively, in the NISVA Championships, New York State Championships on February 25th and 26th. Both achieved all-state honors. Both of them had fantastic seasons. They actually hit the 100-win mark this year as well. And boy, a big shout out to our varsity cheerleading team who won the county championship. Great event. I had not been to a cheerleading county championship before. Just a fantastic event. Our team won the Suffolk County Championship and then went to the States and finished 4th in cheerleading in New York State. So congratulations to the cheerleading team. Great job by them. The spring season is beginning on March 14th. So looking forward to our spring athletic season coming underway. Just a note, as part of the 2019-2024 strategic plan, part of that plan included some surveys to see how we're doing against that plan. So we're in the process of developing some of those. I expect to send out a very brief, hope everybody takes it, less than 5-minute communication survey over the next couple of weeks, and then maybe 1 or 2 more related to strategic planning outcomes over the course of the rest of the school year. This evening we have a few presentations. We have a legislative committee update. I want to thank the members of that committee for meeting across the year. The committee recently met with local legislative offices. I believe Ms. Bettenhauser is here, the committee chair, this evening to share some of the priorities and work of that committee. I will update the board this evening briefly on some of the changes to New York State COVID-19 mandates and some of the remaining changes to our opening schools plan. And tonight, of course, is our first budget presentation for the school district. It's the first of a series of presentations as we work to create a budget for next year in the school district. Also includes a review tonight of a draft capital proposition related to the high school art room and high school auxiliary gym. And I do know that we recognize our retirees in June, and I know we will absolutely do that for Mr. Angelo Andriotti, but I really have to note that on tonight's agenda, we are accepting the retirement of a trusted, reliable, student-dedicated, knowledgeable, just right-hand person for the school district, Mr. Angelo Andriotti, our Director of Facilities for the last 10 years, seen us through bond projects, water main breaks, snowstorms, power outages, health and safety projects, many, many capital projects, and I just want to make mention that we'll be accepting his retirement tonight, and sorry to see him retire, but wish him success, and we'll have him back in June to wish him the best formally with the rest of our retirees. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poole. We now have our Miller Avenue student presentation. Mrs. Smith.
Good evening to our Board of Education, Mr. Poole, district office members, and our community. And a very special welcome to my friends from Miller Avenue and their families. I am so glad to see you here tonight. This evening, we recognize your artwork and your extraordinary effort. I'd like to invite up Miss Daria Brown, who is our art teacher at Miller Avenue, and I'd also like to thank her for her efforts at school and for putting this evening together. Come on up, Miss Brown.
Good evening. My name is Dari Brown. I'm the Millers Avenue art teacher. All the artwork that you saw tonight was done by kindergarten, first grade, and second grade students. We explored different mediums, including oil pastel, watercolor paint, tempera paint, some ceramics, paper collage, and we learned about famous artists, we learned about poets and musicians and authors, and read a lot of stories. If some of the students are here tonight, if they'd like to come up on stage and we can get a picture. Thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah, have the students come up. Miss Brown, too.
Go ahead, right into the middle.
Yeah,
Come on, right
keep on
down.
moving down.
All the
Move,
way down.
move
Perfect.
all the way down.
Just where that other.
Thank you. Back.
Good job, Aggie.
Can we get another round of applause for our beautiful artists' work? Thank you so much for coming this evening to give us an art show. All of your work looks creative, and even your words describing your work was very creative. Thank you. Great
Wow,
job.
yeah, great artwork.
Thank you so much. And special thank you to the parents for bringing your students for this art show. Thank you.
Budget time. Committee update. I'm not on that committee.
No, I'm saying,
Thank you.
Do we have any opportunity for board members? No? Thank you. Stephanie, do we have any statements from residents?
No.
Okay, thank you. We'll go straight to reports and reviews then. Mr. Poole, Legislative Committee update. And thank you, Mrs. Bettenhauser, for coming.
Hey, Glenn, I guess it's budget season, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good evening. I want to thank our Board of Education Legislative Committee for their work across the school year. Our chair, Gina Bettenhauser, Melissa Brandt, Patricia DeTiberis, Craig Goldstein, Sarah Perez, Mike Sanchez, Erin Saunders Moreno, Elizabeth Spencer. We had some students join our committee as usual, Sophia Minion, Elizabeth Sabino, Don Kai Zhang, Gabrielle Ziegler, and of course myself and Mr. Arcuri on the team, and many thanks to the trustees on the committee, and Mr. Perez and Mr. Sheridan. So we've had a lot of good work this fall, which culminated in a meeting with our local legislators, with Assembly Member Jody Giglio and a representative from Senator Palumbo's office, Angela Noncaro. So good, productive meeting. We're just here to give you an update on the legislative priorities, maybe how that meeting went a bit with our legislative offices. And with that, I will turn it over to our chair, Ms. Gina Bettenhauser.
Thank you. So what we did this year was we reviewed our what do we call them, Joe?
Legislative priorities.
Our legislative priorities, I'm sorry, over the last few years. And these are the 4 that we thought were most important to focus on this year. I'm going to start with the funding of our mental health resources, which goes into what Jerry was saying earlier, how much the kids really need it this year still. So the availability of mental health services is critical, especially in light of the negative impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the students. We also discussed the legalization of marijuana, which we feel would create additional mental health needs for our children, and we were all in agreement that additional funding is critical for these two items. We also discussed a fulfillment commitment to fully fund foundation aid for our schools. New York State school aid is critical to the success of our district, especially when considering rising inflation costs, the tax cap, and increased student need. And of course, our favorite, the unfunded mandates. We're asking for no more unfunded mandates. Any new state mandates must be accompanied by a corresponding increase in funding. New York State should establish an education mandate relief redesign team to review ways to reduce the cost of unfunded mandates to the school districts. And our last priority that we discussed was to suspend annual professional performance review, the APPR legislation. Current laws for teacher evaluations do not meet the needs of our school districts, and control of the APPR should be returned to the school districts.
Thank the committee. We had a good 45-minute to 1-hour meeting with our local legislative offices. I want to thank those 2 officers going there. Assembly Member Giglio was very curious, taking notes, asking questions, asked us for some follow-up information, and we all really felt that both offices walked away with a real understanding about what Shoreham-Wading River needs to be successful in the future. What we always do as well is give a 10 or 15-minute presentation about what are we about, what's the district like, what's important, what are our successes, what is part of our program, what does our student and district look like, and some information on the district financials. So giving the legislators an understanding of the district, and then coming back and saying, here are some things that are important for the school district. So and thank the committee. Certainly we'll be meeting again. We'll see what emerges in the state budget around April 1st. And thank you, Gina, for coming this evening. Great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for, yourself included, Gina, so many people on that committee that have served for years and years. Really appreciate your dedication. Thank you.
2 questions real quick. Thank you for the presentation. First one, that no more unfunded mandates. No, the list isn't included with this. Are there, I'm aware of some, but are there more, or are we still seeing repeated unfunded mandates year to year?
We do. We had an audit committee meeting. I'll give you one that came up at the audit committee meeting. Maybe it was last week. It is a new auditing requirement for a GASB review and audit of all district leases, which cannot be done by your district independent auditor. Has to be outsourced. So that may be a great thing to do for districts, to have an audit of your leases as part of your annual audit. That's not the argument. The argument is that it came with no money, so it's going to cost funds to make that happen. So that's another unfunded mandate. just recently, we had a series of mandates for school district that did not come with necessary funding. All of the mandates required for the last couple of years funding did not match the needs for those things. When there is a change, and again, often mandates are great for the district and great ideas and great, they don't come with money. The changes to lead testing and the threshold for lead just changed. That's going to require many districts to swap out water fountains, make improvements, make changes. That did not come with any funding, so it's a change in law that didn't come with any additional funding. So there is be happy to share, there's a list, I think Mr. Arcuri may have it as well, there's probably a 3-page list in New York State of unfunded mandates that the state has put out. And we're saying the mandates may be great, but they have to come with funding. Otherwise, we are making considerations about other things in the school district that we've deemed to be important. These may start to pinch from things that we're doing that cost money.
The other question, as far as the legalization of marijuana, I know it was talked or mentioned about when the I guess you had a couple of representatives, local politicians. Was there any conversation about providing additional funding to school districts through profits of marijuana and also sportsbook, now that that's legal in New York as well?
Well, not so much on the sport book, but it was a pretty detailed conversation about marijuana. Some of the concerns with how marijuana could be packaged as a gummy bear or as an Oreo cookie, and these are definitely threats to students. That the conversation that the revenue stream for the state, is probably not likely to match the needs for schools. Some conversation about should be adding a health teacher to every school now to get in front of all of the education that's going to be needed for that. A very receptive listening, did not, local legislators not in support of legalizing marijuana, and really understanding the potential real negative impacts, and certainly we see that on the island, real negative impacts of legalizing marijuana and the many forms that it will now take. For students, and so it's a real concern, and I believe Gina, well received. They took a.
I think, part of the conversation with that too is that, Assemblywoman Giglio is a member of a neighboring school district, and we've all heard what's been going on over there. So it was a big concern, and I've known her for quite some time, and to see her so engaged in that conversation meant that it's something that is very near and dear to her heart, and it's not something that she's going to just she's not going to let it go easy.
I think one of the things, Mike, on the committee, one of the things we all spoke about is like a gateway drug. Does this lead to drug use and what that would mean? And then, as you just mentioned, Ms. Bittenhauser, the accompanying school district has had some recent, I guess I'll call it problems related to it. So we only see this happening, Mike, more often. And what can a school district do when it doesn't have the resources to really combat this at the student level, not just in education, but even potentially in advocacy and other efforts to potentially prevent it, right, I think, at the end of the day. So it's definitely a concern. It was a concern for the committee and the residents that were there.
Yeah. Just to that point, I know one of the strategic planning goals and we've been working on it that came out in October was really looking at our health curriculum, looking at all the grades, how are we teaching drug prevention for students, where can it be strengthened and where should it be added. And I know that work with Mr. Meinster, Mr. Passamonte, and some of our principals is underway and ongoing. So hopefully we can make some inroads with enhancing our drug prevention curriculum and student instruction, but it's definitely a concern, and that's why it made it up here as a priority.
I think that once something like this becomes legal in the state, they would set aside some funds to probably educate students of the risks.
There is a.
That was my point. Is there any funding going forward?
There is a clause in
the profits are going to be through the roof between this and sports betting.
There's a clause in the bill that if you look at the past legislation, there is a clause about funding coming to schools. Not sure what that value is going to be for a school district, at least here in the island. If you want to have a health teacher and you have salary and health costs, you're going to be $80,000 to $100,000 for another school psychologist or health teacher. Is the money going to come to school districts just through our foundation aid allocation? So it's going to fill the state's coffers and like lottery money, and then it's going to come that way into, or will there be a separate line in the budget for, drug prevention, or will it be a non-competitive grant to districts that says, okay, everybody, here's additional $40,000 to develop drug prevention programs or to do that. Some of our conversation was, we wouldn't need this money if you didn't legalize marijuana. We wouldn't need the funding, for it. So it's yet to be determined. There is a line in there about funding coming to schools, but it's how they do that is yet to be determined.
Okay, thank you.
No, thank you.
Mr. Poole, you're now going to provide us with the
I am.
updated code.
Let's see. Yeah, could you? Thank you. It's about 2 years to the day that we have been going through COVID-19 and the impacts on schools and most importantly, the impacts on children throughout the last couple of years. And I know it was a very, very, very welcome news, the lifting of the state mandates for masks that was effective March 4th. And then subsequent to that, the state issued, I guess right before March 4th, the state issued a series of health requirements and health documents. Out of that release of an updated interim guidance for schools, it was reduced down to 3 requirements for school districts from the New York State Department of Health. One of those is the continued mandated reporting of positive cases to New York State. That is a requirement. The other is a requirement for the use of a mask or face covering after infection. So if you had COVID-19 and you come back to school or come back to work on day 6, from days 6 through 10, a mask is required by New York State. And then the last is the continuance of the testing of unvaccinated staff. And that is, from my understanding, that is set to expire at the end of May. It's yet to be determined whether that would be continued or not for unvaccinated staff in the school district. Our first reopening plan was probably 80 pages long. We had a reopening plan this fall that we amended that first year. We had a reopening plan this fall that matched the New York State mandates and the emergency order from the governor at the very beginning of the school year, which was released. And we are at the point 2 years later where the requirements have gone away but for those 3. As a school district, and I'm very proud of the Board of Education, the community, our staff, our students, there's been every effort to provide everything that we've always done for students to the extent that we could. Sometimes the field trip place wasn't open, so we couldn't go there. But when I look back, and we'll do the budget presentation, you'll see some photos from the school year of things that students do that they typically do. And yes, they have masks on, but there are activities that we've prided in providing for students across the year. So the reopening plan is just down to a page, effective upon adoption of the plan. We will be moving back to regular cafeteria use at the speed that we're able. There are some cafeteria tables in storage, so that may take a little bit to get them out of storage or up in Briarcliff to get them back to the buildings. But our cafeterias will be open. That means at the middle school, lunch will get out of the auxiliary gym. That means at the high school, lunch can get out of the auxiliary gym, and students can, at the middle school and high school and Wading River, use those beautiful cafeterias that were built through the bond project just a few years back. So great to have the students back in those spaces. Band and chorus, they've been at 6 feet. In fact, band has been practicing on the stage at 6 feet. It'd be great to get them back into the band room. Fiddle on a Roof production can go full steam on the stage, so they will be returning back to their normal uses, and that will impact all of the buildings, band, chorus, and cafeteria, get back to traditional spacing. Additionally, in the at the building level, we had 6 feet of spacing at the start of the school year with the health department mandates and requirements for contact tracing. 6 feet supported the having mask breaks as students need them, but not creating close contacts if there was a positive case. The 6 feet spacing contact tracing is no longer a requirement. So that 6 feet of spacing is no longer required at the elementary level. We will be discontinuing contact tracing, just like New York State hasn't contact traced since the start of January, I believe. So contact tracing is not required. We will not be contact tracing. However, we will continue to alert families of positive cases in the school district, just like we've been doing for the last couple of years. Parents will be notified, and staff, when there's a positive case in the building. We have a great crew adding disinfecting, so we'll continue. We have the crew here working. We'll have them continue some of the nightly disinfecting, and then I think the live streaming has been helpful. There may still be some students that are impacted by having COVID-19. Maybe you have 3 AP classes at the high school and you're getting knocked out for a week. You'd be able to live stream in at least for the remainder of this year to keep that option available to students impacted by COVID-19. So basically, the last few pieces for the school district to get back to where we were, we had already allowed visitors in the building. We were doing field trips and all those things. But for those 3 requirements, mask on days 6 through 10 after having COVID-19, report to the state, and the unvaccinated staff that continued weekly testing until I believe the end of May. So it's shortened and just captures sort of the things that we have to do.
Next one question.
Yeah.
So we're not contact tracing anymore. So I appreciate the information, whether it's daily, whenever they occur, the positive cases. But what's the purpose of getting notified if there's a case? Will that create someone to think that maybe there was a close contact where we're not really contact tracing? So
You know,
sure,
somebody could call
administration.
and follow up. It's just, you know, we've been doing it and sharing that information with staff and families for since the beginning of the pandemic, and it just made sense to finish that for the rest of the school year and not make a change to that. And then if somebody has a deeper concern, they can certainly call about that.
Mr. Poole, just had a question. Thank you for sharing the changes that you just described. I'm sure it's a happy position that we're in right now. The one thing I did have a question on was, and I think what made it very positive for us in our daily activities in the district was ventilation. And so I'm assuming the intent is to continue to ventilate the rooms as we were previously, which was probably providing a little bit more ventilation that we normally have years before, right?
I will get back to the board on that specifically. I don't think we've taken a look yet on changing it. So everything's still running the way it's been running, but have yet to have a conversation about what's the timing for, you know, running the system 2 hours after the end of the school day to exchange the air at a greater volume or a greater frequency. So that is certainly something we need to review to see if we'll be continuing that or not. But as of now, that's all still in place. I'm happy to come back to the board with the results of our discussion about continuing that I'll call it additional ventilation in the buildings. Now, I do want to make a note on contact tracing. You know, yes, the state dropped contact tracing, and we are dropping contact tracing, but our district data, besides the dropping of the mandate, fully supports the elimination of contact tracing and the identification of close contacts and the quarantine of students. We have not had students that were quarantined, you know, for 10 days or for 5 days come back and test positive. In fact, we look back at all of the students this year that were identified at close contacts, and then look back from days 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and no students between days 0 and 6 that were identified as close contact, except for a sibling. That's a different variable. Came down with COVID-19, and that's very similar data to last year's data. So not identifying close contacts is not a safety, from our own district data and experience, it's not a safety issue. It is something that is going to keep kids in school, and again, over the last 2 years has not produced cases when the students were home. So.
Do you have any more questions? Thank you, Mr. Poole, and to
Great.
all the administration, the entire district, for Tyler's efforts over the past 2 years in executing a plan that has been just, had this health and safety of all of our students and staff at top priority, and it's definitely a good day, as Henry said, that we can put this mostly behind us at this point, and especially given one of the legislative priorities for the mental health needs of our students, we have, just the work has only begun in terms of the impact that this has had on our district. We're not alone in that, and excited to get back to even closer back to normal.
Well, I would absolutely agree, and shifting priorities to other areas like mental health, and not that it hasn't been a priority, but being able to spend more time and attention to other matters in the school district is most welcome for all of us here. And it's been a long 2 years, but very grateful for what we were able to do. And yes, we have gaps, and we'll continue to work on meeting the needs of students. But this is definitely welcome. This is welcome news across the district. So happy to share it.
Thank you. Next, we have our first 2022-2023 budget presentation by Mr. Accrued.
So I'm gonna stay up for a minute. Got it, right? Thank you for coming. All right. Great, good. All right. Well, I have to first start off with I'm glad to be here, our first budget presentation of the year. In the district, this process began probably back in October. Lots of work, and in some ways involves every staff member in the school district as we look at what are the needs for all of our programs and areas of the school district. I have to give a big thank you to Mr. Arcuri, who is just an amazing leader in this area, and takes us through it every year with precision, care, thoughtful questioning, and planning. So tonight's our first presentation, 22-23 budget, and also, which we shared before publicly, a capital project proposition related to the use of prior year state aid and the high school art room, and the creation of a health and physical fitness center. And pictures worth 1,000 words. I'll talk a little bit. This is always a chance for me to brag a little bit about our amazing students and the program in the school district. Just some great photos of student artwork, students performing, students doing community service, students having guest presentations, students working on poetry, artwork. Just yes, if I had a little eraser, I'd erase the little masks off. But the pictures are very similar to all of the prior years in the school district. So with great pride, I share those photos.
Mr. Poole,
Yeah.
I'm familiar with a lot of these, but I'm embarrassed to say I don't know the meaning behind the cupcake. What is that one?
It is a student artwork, and so I just took a clip of some of the artwork. It's a pretty realistic.
It does
great
look, it looks
cupcake, right?
real, and I was getting
It's
hungry.
It's
hungry.
making me
He's
a little
hungry.
hungry now too.
I have a very bad sweet tooth.
Yeah. Good example of student.
It looked that realistic.
Student artwork. So I'm going to move on to. What did I do? Okay. Try another way. Okay. Just take a moment. The budget every year supports an amazing program here and supports just amazing student outcomes in the school district. From graduation rate to advanced designation regents rates to attendance at college to special education graduation rates to student participation in the arts to specialized science programs to the new seal of biliteracy to the ever increasing number of students that are earning college credit. All of the budget, all of that really boils down to the achievements and the outcomes that we're able to have for students. So that's really where the process begins and where the process ends on student achievement. And our students continue to impress and continue to do really well. And that's likely because the school district really provides, and I don't have them all on here, I have 2 slides, it really provides a long list of what I would call world-class opportunities for students that rises well above the New York State mandates and requirements for education. And I'll spend a little time on mission and vision in a minute, but helps students with their individual successes. So full mental health, social emotional program, partnerships for mental health. I mentioned AP and collegiate dual enrollment program, dual middle school sports, science partnerships, field trips, extensive cultural arts program, summer programming to support students in enrichment and support students in remediation, elementary orchestra, band, full theater program, mindfulness program, staff to support that, secondary extra help program, after school, community programs. This year, a UPK program for the first time, lottery-based for 32 students, natural helpers, secondary library maker spaces. So lots of extracurricular clubs, K through 12 from Miller Avenue on up. So just all of these opportunities are part of the program here at Shoreham-Wading River, in addition to the academic in-school program for math, science, reading, and writing that make our program special and produce the outcomes that for our students that project them into life.
So when you hear the term, the Shoreham-Wading River experience, right, this is truly the school district, at its essence.
It is, and it's a standard, and these are programs that attract people to the school district, but more importantly, they are the things that attract students to excel and take advantage. And sometimes come to school, right? I may be so excited about robotics, I'm going to come do really great in social studies because I want to make sure I'm here for the robotics program at the end of the school day. So they're all, in some ways, impactful of students. But yes, it is the, when I came, I was advised of the SWR standard. It is the SWR standard, as Mr. Arcuri would remind. I just want to pause briefly that before we, just sort of a sidestep on this, that the district does have federal grant funding. We made full use of it this year. We'll make full use of it next year. So the federal grant funding has provided additional programs to close the gaps for some students throughout the pandemic, and then to provide some unique outdoor learning spaces into the future for our students. So then these are not coming out of the general fund. So these are not, I'll say, budgeted items. They are grant funded through the federal grant. So full-time math AIS teacher, 0.5 reading teacher, district-wide psychologist, very valuable this year for behaviors, IT resources, for the high school mentor program, going fantastic. Partial, we do use part of this funding to support the UPK state grant, additional field experiences. We have other extracurricular opportunities through these federal grant fundings for ENL students, some great new summer programs last year that were grant funded. So we do have one more year of the funding. So in next year's, these will be part of next year's budget, and they'll be federally grant funded. And really the intent is, can we leverage the funding to close the gap where we think students have need, whether it's mental health or math or reading or enrichment. Not too long ago, a couple years ago, we adopted a mission vision, a new mission vision and value statement for the school district. And I think it's important to bring those up and make mention of them, because they were at the heart of the start of the budget process and at the heart of the end of the budget process. So I won't read the whole thing, I'll read a couple of sentences from both. We prioritize the individual needs of all learners so they are physically, socially, and emotionally healthy, safe, engaged, supported, and challenged in ways that foster their personal growth. So what is part of our Shoreham-Wading River Standard certainly aligns to that, and some of the restructuring and enhancements to the budget moving into next year certainly align really well with that. We ensure, part of the vision, we ensure all learners complete their SWR education well prepared, effective problem solvers, able to follow their post-secondary ambitions and make meaningful contributions to society as members of the global community, and that they are empowered and have the skill set to pursue diverse educational pathways that propel them to maximize their success in life. So certainly the budget and the growth of the budget every year and this year as well is geared towards meeting that mission and vision value statement for the school district. Also, right front and center, which is lined up with the mission, vision, and value, is the 5 pillars of the 2019-2024 strategic plan: maintaining our whole child programming, enhancing graduation outcomes, maintaining high-quality programming, healthy, safe, engaging spaces, and communication with stakeholders. So I'm going to share a few slides, a few enhancements to the school district budget before I turn it over to Mr. Arcuri for some of the finances and the numbers and some of the areas of the budget he'll be covering today. But the next couple of slides really line up well with the strategic planning pillars, especially maintaining high-quality program and whole child and student graduation outcomes. So there are a couple of new, this is done in collaboration with the Curriculum Council, with the high school staff, some new high school course offerings. In the high school, haven't had these before or in quite some time. I hear students are very excited by this, by our art teacher who are teaching these courses next year, Ceramics 1 and Ceramics 2. They are course offerings. They'll be available if we hear students are interested, but like anything in a course catalog, if there's minimal student interest in any given year, it may not run that semester or that year, but there's interest for these courses, and looking forward to seeing the products that students have. Digital photography, we have that wonderful new multimedia lab, so a digital photography class in there. Mythology as a additional elective for grade 12 students. English 12 students could take mythology. And then really importantly for students in our learning centers, for students that are pushing themselves for success on state assessments, adding a learning lab to Earth Science, English 9, English 12, Global 2, and U.S. History, meaning that every other day the students will get a little more of those subjects for their success for the state regents program. I know since the inception of the strategic plan, which in the plan itself has a full review of the middle school program with the goal of creating more opportunity for students and meeting the mission and vision of the school district. I know there were committee presentations prior to the pandemic, and just this fall coming back to the public and sharing some ideas for that. That has taken some great shape. And really excited to announce for next year a restructuring of the middle school to a 9-period day. That change is going to provide access for special education students, students in intervention services to have access to the full offerings at the middle school. It's also going to allow for students that in the past may have been reluctant to avail themselves of intervention services, knowing that they may lose out on technology or consumer sciences. So those opportunities for students that are requiring extra help or in special education is going to expand access to that, the full course catalog. You may not think this may not be readily available, but students that are accelerated, that take Earth Science Lab, miss out as well. A change to a 9-period day is going to let those students have broader access to electives as well. It's also going to offer access to a variety of new electives to all students. And really excited, these are electives that came from the building through staff, through department meetings. So electives planned, and some curriculum writing will start shortly. Planned electives are introduction to agriculture, geography, digital music, computer science, journalism, and a STEAM course for students. That will be available largely. Greater access is likely to be for students in the middle, and often we hear about students in the middle. So you have students on the higher end, students on the lower end having access to electives they didn't have in the past. You have a whole new pool of electives, so students will have many more opportunities for diverse experiences. And really, a middle school is about exploration and multiple experiences and trying to figure out your path, forward in life. Often students take career surveys and things like that as middle school before they enter the high school, and exposure and experiences to these will be really important for students. So it's been a long time coming and in development, and excited that it's at this point now that it's in the draft budget. This will also, not that they need it, listening to the jazz band at the middle school with Miss Keneally singing an Ella Fitzgerald song with the jazz band and listening to the concerts, but this will also have the effect of allowing the ensembles to meet daily within the regular school day at the middle school. So I can't imagine what will come as daily ensemble practices happen at the middle school, and students, and that's quite a few students, hundreds of students in middle school benefit from that. It maintains AM extra help for students. It maintains an academic advisory period. It does eliminate the need for that early morning ensemble bus in the morning, because the ensembles will be part of the regular school day. So if students take that regular bus run, they'll be in time to get into the ensemble at that part of that part of the school day. So great work by Mr. Van, the team there, Curriculum Council, Mr. Meinster, our directors, Dr. Palicelli, Ms. Wallbauer, and excited to make that a part of the draft budget proposal for this year. Very excited about this one as well. We've had we have a retirement coming of a wonderful staff member, but the retirement does give the district, did give us pause to think about replacing the person that's retiring and what could the program be. So as opposed to replacing that position, proposals to replace it with a shared elementary librarian. And I won't read all those reasons, which are all great reasons to have a school librarian, but the district has not had elementary librarians well before I arrived, so I want to say it's been over 7 years or so since we've had an elementary librarian. So the addition for that, an emphasis on research skills, assessing information for validity, working with teachers, expanding our Makerspace program down there, helping students with all areas of literacy, helping sort of guide the elementary libraries into the future as well. So happy to share that as a draft proposal in the budget as well. And then I think finally, as an add-on, is expanded nurse coverage. The budget, and Mr. Accrued will get a little further into the additional positions, but the expanded nurse coverage is going to provide us 2 nurses in each building. That is going to give us the ability to provide nurse coverage before the start of the school day, where we have many programs and staff, extra help. Sometimes clubs are in the morning, so a lot of activities before the start of the regular school day, and then just as importantly, after the end of the school day, from the time the school day ends. And our schools don't end at the end of the school day. We have clubs, we have athletics, so there's a lot going on in our buildings with children at the end. So this will allow us to wrap both ends of the school day, provide some overlap, some additional nursing support for student health needs, which are ever increasing, whether it's allergies or it's diabetic students, or it's students with seizures, with seizure medications. So this will also reduce our reliance on substitute nurses. It's been a real challenge to get substitute nurses, whether it's if a nurse is out, whether it's for a field trip, we provide a nurse. So expanding that nurse coverage for the health and safety of our students made sense this year, and that is in the draft budget proposal as well. Oop. Okay, so before I turn over to Mr. Arcuri for that, for great enhancements, restructuring to the school district budget to keep that Shoreham-Wading River standard high and thoughtful, lots of time and thinking, especially for the middle school restructuring of that, especially for moving to 2 nurses, the elementary librarian, and one of the strategic planning goals as well was really to consider the art electives in the high school and how do we expand and generate more interest and keep the arts alive and going. So the addition of the 2 ceramic courses and the digital photography courses definitely meets that, that goal. Thank you.
A question, Mr. Poole.
Yeah.
The rationale for the identification of the Learning Lab new course offerings in the high school, is that predominantly tied to Regents data?
That is the group of students in the high school as well that, yes, it is definitely to have them greater success, improve their passing rates, improve their advanced designation rates too. But those students, upon a review of the data, seem to have more open periods than others. And sometimes some of the electives didn't fit. So we wanted to increase some of the academic work in a way that made sense, and so targeted those 5 courses to give a little bit more time for students for it to be successful.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Arcuri, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Poole.
I think I've been up here for a while, right? You did a great job. Yeah, good. Okay, I don't know if that's working, so you may have to move your finger. Thanks, Glenn.
Well, it's very hard to believe that we're here again. I have a full audience, very, very happy to see the turnout. True to form, I take that as a testament of confidence. I think that the community supports the work we have done in the past. I think they are very, very supportive of our programs, and I think it's a great testament to the Board of Education, who eventually adopts the superintendent's budget and puts it out to the voters. As Mr. Poole had pointed out, the budget buys a lot. The budget buys a lot of programs. The budget buys a lot of opportunities for students. And the budget supports a fantastic group of staff, whether it's from custodians to superintendent, go across the entire gamut, part-time, full-time workers. There's a great bunch of people here that truly make all these accomplishments possible. So I just think it's important to point that out. I'm going to give you a little bit of history, so there's always a little bit of background. The tax levy limit came into effect in 2012. We give you a little bit of background. For the past 5 years, we show you that the tax levy value has increased $2,233,573. So over the last 5 years, we've increased on average $558,000 a year. So that's all we're really able to increase. That's all the amount of money we're able to ask the taxpayers for in addition. So in order to keep the programs alive, in order to keep what we have going, it's always been important to be very, very fiscally responsible. Budget to budget increases. We had the last 5 years an average of 2.13%. Some years they're as low as 0.95, others as high as 4.57. In each individual year, there's always an anomaly between something. There's either something coming off the books, something coming on the books, whether it's a crazy rate for health insurance. That's why we try to give you an average to say, okay, the average budget-to-budget increases are 2.13, and our average tax levy increase, which I did not include, is actually less than 2.13.
Brooke, I was going to ask, this chart that you put up, budget increase the last 5 years, I was wondering if you could show something, the tax levy numbers per year. Because I
Great
think
idea.
that's a lot less than
Correct. Great idea. I will include that in the upcoming presentation. We have presentations on March 15th, March 22nd, so we will definitely build upon this one.
that 4.57 isn't the increase in taxes, that's the
No,
levy.
that is your
Right.
budget-to-budget
That's the
increase
budget
for
increase.
21-22.
Levy's a lot less than that.
Yes.
Yeah, the average, it's been well below 2% on average.
Before we start the 2022-23 budget process, I think it's important to point something out that actually happened to the 2021-2022 numbers. During the budget process for 21-22, we were showing the tax levy limit at the time was $55,944,041, and our other local revenue was $379,723. Well, as the Board of Education recalls, middle of October, Riverhead announced to us that the LIPA-owned properties in the town of Riverhead are no longer going to be part of the tax warrant. They're going to be included separately as what's called a pilot payment. So the district made the right decision, as far as we were concerned, to reduce our tax levy so we didn't levy to the taxpayers more, because LIPA is supposed to be giving us a pilot payment. So when we set the tax levy for 21-22 school year, we didn't set it at the $55,944. We set it at $55,622.563. The reason why it's important to point that out is sometimes people take last year's budget presentation, pick up this year's budget presentation, and there's a difference in value. So I think it's important that the taxpayers know their tax levy amount was actually less than the 1% that we projected for last year. We actually reduced it to almost a little bit more than 0.5% because of a pilot payment. Does anyone have any questions with that? Because going forward, we're not going to be using the 55,944. We're going to be using the 55,622 number. Typically, before we start the budget process, it is always nice to see what are the district reserve balances. This is a requirement by the Comptroller's Office. This information will wind up on the district's website. We are required to show the reserve balances, but it's also nice to know the reserve balances are what contributed to the district's fiscal stability, which is why we were able to earn a fiscal stress score of 0. So according to the Comptroller's Office, we have very strong fiscal health. There's two types of reserves. There are restricted reserves and unrestricted reserves. An unrestricted reserve is a reserve for a purpose but doesn't have a criteria attached to it, doesn't have voter approval, does not have a required schedule to fund it. So the tax reduction reserve, this reserve was established in 2008. It was established for the purpose of prior year state aid payments. Currently, the balance as of July 1st, 2021 was a little bit less than $3.8 million. Anticipated use towards the 22-23 budget is 0. Have a little asterisk there to note, even though it's not part of the budget, there is a separate proposition that the voters are going to be taking up on May 17th, that if it's supported, it is funded by prior year state aid, which will reduce the balance to a little less than $900,000. Employee Retirement System Reserve, as of July 1st, a little more than $4.8 million. We are proposing to use $1 million towards the revenue budget. Teachers Retirement System, $970,660. We are proposing to use $500,000 of it to offset revenue. Workers' compensation, $662,603 balance. We're proposing to use $550,000 to balance the 22-23 budget. And unemployment reserve, we have $501,791. We are anticipating to use $480,000 of it. With regard to restricted district reserves, you have the Employee Benefits Accrued Liability Reserve. What this reserve is for, it is based on the district's contracts, bargaining unit agreements, we have an actuary perform a calculation for us. And then we also do a compensated absences calculation to say, what is the district's employee benefit accrued liability? What is our exposure for a certain period of time if we had to pay out on sick time, had to pay out on contractual benefits? So inside of this reserve, it's a little bit more than $3 million, and this is about a 20 to 25 year look forward. 2021 Capital Reserve Fund, the voters approved this reserve, May of 2021. We are not able to fund it in the year in which it was established, so it cannot be funded in 2021. So the reason why it's zero is the first opportunity to fund this reserve will be with any possible funds out of 21-22. And final restricted reserve is a repair reserve. It has a little bit more than $27,000 in it. This repair reserve goes back to 2006. There is a plan to spend these funds. It was originally anticipated that I'd be bringing something forward on March 22nd. It's going to be moving to April 12th. There was a timing issue that I was just brought to my attention today. So there will not be something coming on March 22nd, but the plan is to do a required hearing during the Board of Education meeting on April 12th, explain that the repair reserve funds will be used for some maintenance work at the middle school. It has to be published inside the newspaper. If anyone has any questions, comments, or concerns, they share it during the hearing. And then based on anything heard, the Board of Education takes action on the resolution for that evening. So the repair reserve at the end should be zero come June 30th, 2022.
Just one question
Sure.
or clarification. Going back to district reserves.
Yep.
The prior year state aid, that's slated to expire?
We have prior year state aid came in different installments. So we have 2 installments remaining. One came in 2013, one came in 2014. So the first batch that we have to use is a little more than $2 million. That is $2.8 million. It's going to be used, assuming the voters support the proposition, come this May. And then the remaining balance of $900,000 we have until October 2024.
Mr. Accrued, at our last audit committee meeting, I know you did a very good explanation. I know I had some questions regarding the employee benefits accrued liability reserve.
Mhm.
And you did say it's one additional piece tonight where you expressed how it's over a 25-year period. Can you maybe just go into that explanation a little bit, just for the other
I'll
board
be happy
members
to, sure.
hear? Okay.
Sure. So if you just take a bargaining unit contract, there is language in them that says if you're here for X number of years and upon retirement, if you retire from the district, when you're first eligible, you are able to receive a payout for each 3 sick days. You could get paid out $50. That calculation is what we determine to do a cycle and say, okay, in the next 20 to 30 years, we look at our seniority of our staff, come up with what's called a compensated absences calculation, and based on the terms and conditions of contractual benefits, not for a side incentive that we might do, anything within the collective bargaining agreement, we do the calculation and say, okay, the district's liability based on the staffing levels we have today, if they were all to retire at the time the contract allows, this is the district's exposure. This is just your active employee exposure. This has nothing to do with a retired employee's pension benefit going forward. This is active employees only.
And it's a calculation that's
It's a
done, right?
compensated absences calculation, yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Moving on to the tax levy limit calculation, something that I like to do every a budget presentation is to just walk through the process. So the tax levy limit calculation is based on a formula provided by the Office of the State Comptroller. For a simple majority vote, we need 50% of the voters to say yes, +1. The district is not proposing to pierce the tax cap. The allowable tax levy limit with exclusions for this year is 1.5943. The district is levying to the limit. All anticipated pilot payments have been included. As I mentioned earlier, last year we had to adjust the tax levy limit because a new pilot came to light. With what we know today, these are our 5 pilot payments. One of them pertains to LIPA property in the town of Brookhaven, Cross Sound Cable, FTS Project 2 Solar Farm, Shoreham Solar Commons, and the pilot I mentioned earlier is the property in Riverhead, the LIPA property in Riverhead. The calculation includes the following allowable exclusions: all debt service payments, payment related to the $33.5 million bond, payments for the 2 energy performance contracts, and our share of BOCE's capital expenditure. In addition, the current tax levy limit calculation is based on the building aid in the governor's executive budget provided to us on January 18th, 2022. Historically, that number can change. It doesn't change a lot, but it can change, which means the tax levy limit calculation has the strong possibility of changing once the governor finalizes the budget on or about April 1st. So what I try to walk through so everyone has a clear understanding that if you start with the tax levy for 21-22, this year the tax base growth factor happens to be 0. It's the first time since 2012 for us our tax base growth factor is 0. What that factor is a figure determined by the Office of Real Property Tax Services. What type of new building went up inside of your taxing jurisdiction? Was there any brick and mortar additions? We happened to be flat. So there was no increase, no added to our taxing area. You then add the pilot payments from 21-22. You then subtract the BOCE's capital cost, energy performance contract payment number 1, energy performance contract payment number 2, bond principal and interest payment, all from the 21-22 school year. You then add back your building aid offset for BOCES and your building aid for state aid. And you always hear, what is the tax levy allowable increase? This year it happens to be 2%. Our allowable growth factor, even though CPI is at the time was over 7.5%, they said, great, we're going to give you could max your limit at 2%. So that brings us to 4.70 is what our tax levy is. However, now they want you to subtract out what are you receiving in pilot payments for 22-23. The second we take our pilot payments out, which are not paid by the taxpayers, they're paid by the enterprise, we're down to a tax levy below 1, a minus 0.9024%. That's why this slide is critical for people to see. We don't start with a tax levy of 2%. We actually start with a negative 0.90, and then we move into what does the formula allow us to have an exclusion for? Well, BOCE's capital payments that we have to cover, the energy performance contract, The energy performance contract number 2, the bond and principal interest. Now, if we were allowed to stop there, we'd have a 6% levy. But now the formula says, nope, since we give you aid, since you receive state aid, we now have to subtract your anticipated state aid for 22-23. So now we subtract our building aid from BOCES and our building aid that we get for part of our state aid. That's what brings us down to a 1.5943% tax levy increase. So even though the CPI is over 7%, they put us at 2% cap because it's a 2% tax cap. We are only able to raise 1.59% increase in taxes. Any questions on how the tax levy is calculated?
I just want to add also, pilot payments in the last few years has been reduced, right? So nothing is set in stone with regard to those pilot payments.
That is a very important comment. Thank you for raising it. It's important to know that if for some reason the pilot payments were to go down for 22-23, that means our tax levy, the taxpayer picks up a larger burden of the taxes. So if a pilot payment is reduced or a pilot payment is renegotiated, both would happen outside of the district's control. That's happened at the either industrial development agency level or the township level. The district would just be told, as we were told they added a pilot. Last time they told us a couple years ago when Mr. Poole had first started, we're cutting your pilot payment at 50%. And that was told to us right before we're setting the tax levy. So that just, out of the district's control, would push a larger burden onto the taxpayer.
And my concern also is with some of these pilot payments coming from the solar farms and just the general industry where incentives are going for green credits and things associated with that. My concern is always if they do receive credits on their part, that could further impact the actual pilot payments that we receive.
It can.
It would directly come back to us as taxpayers to
That
come
is
up
an allowable reduction per their contract. As the Go Green initiative continues to put incentives, it does impact their pilot payments, which in turn impacts the residents who have to bear the larger burden then of the tax levy. But it's important to note, all of them are out of the district's control. I don't want anyone to think that we wouldn't lobby against it, but we don't even have a chair at the table. We don't even have a seat there.
Quick question about the
Sure.
tax levy.
Hmm?
Is a tax levy still a mandate, but I did some readings, the tax levy was, if a district is below a tax levy, 2%, then residents received a check, almost, I don't want to say a reward, that we kept spending down. in the
some
district.
residents, because it is limited, yeah, right.
I think that expired.
It did. It did. It hasn't been in effect, to my knowledge, since 1920, was the
2020.
1920 tax
Oh,
rate
okay.
would come out in
1920, geez.
2020.
All right. So are we still under this tax cap era, or is
We are
this
still what's in the tax cap era, yes.
even though that kind of
That
payment,
was
it
an
doesn't-
incentive.
That was the incentive.
That was an incentive that was given to the taxpayers for a district that stayed within the tax cap. That was, there's many different ways to describe it, but as long as the district remained tax levy limit compliant, there was a benefit to the taxpayer. Another way to incentivize to not pierce and not ask for more money, even though very few districts in New York State pierce a year anyway.
So with inflation and the increase in costs that you're going to show us, still unable to go beyond this cap.
We cannot
Without
go
piercing.
above, 1.5943%, assuming that the building aid number doesn't change when the final governor's budget comes out, without being considered required to have a supermajority vote, which is 60% plus one, because our calculation comes out to this piece.
So just to be clear, where I guess the general idea out there is that we should stay below a 2%. In order to not meet that threshold of the 60% vote, we need to stay below the 1.59. So we can't even
Correct.
go to arbitrarily, I'll pick 1.75. or
And
whatever.
that goes to the point of this figure here, the allowable growth factor at 2%. We are at the max. CPI at the time when they produced that was 7.5%. So per the guidelines, districts' allowable growth
I'm
factor.
sorry, what was that number?
Which one?
The CPI number?
At the time they released this in December, it was 7.5. So when they released it, knowing that inflation at the time, consumer price index, was 7.5, it triggered the maximum 2%. So this is the first time that that's been triggered for me since 2012, maybe one other time. It has been as low as 0. It has been as low as 0, which brings our number even down further. Moving on to Proposition 1, the 2022-2023 budget. The proposed budget is a 2.95% increase. It's $2,381,992 more than the previous year's budget. As Mr. Poole stated earlier, a budget is not something done by any one person. A budget literally is a district-wide effort to look at all the areas within the budget, pay close attention to different pieces, and develop the maximum amount of money the district feels each department needs in order to sustain, grow, support, and build their programs. As an ever-living dynamic, a budget's a living document. However, with a cap of, if this draft budget is the final budget, we could not spend more than $83,069,576 without declaring some form of an emergency, which would require the Board of Education to adopt. So that's the maximum amount of money the district is able to spend.
And to that point, I think, and you'll see it, on there, and you'll probably,
They're gone.
you'll probably
I've
get to it
been
in
thrown
subsequent
off.
weeks, but
Maybe I've been thrown off.
Mic drop.
it looks like there are some reduction percentages there to compensate, right, as
You are
best as we
correct.
can.
Yep.
So there is some cutting, right?
So that's
But we'll
a
get to
great
that in
segue
subsequent weeks.
into it, though. It is a great segue into it. What this particular slide does, we have used it for a number of years. It is a way to categorize the different budget categories throughout that $83 million dollars. You could see salaries and benefits make up. As always, we don't have machines. We aren't factories. We are a people business. So our machines are our staff. So it's very common to see that salaries and benefits make up majority of our budget. But to your point, we have had reductions inside the debt and transfer area, inside of the facilities area, inside of curriculum and staff development, athletics. All of these categories we will cover inside of the upcoming budget meetings. Tonight, we are going to discuss 72.13% of the budget, which is employee salaries and employee benefits. So to your point, yes, we have had reductions in other areas to bring the budget within the allowable area for us to operate in. And it did come at a cost inside of some areas, not program related, but we will definitely cover them. Employee salaries, this category includes all salaries for all district staff. All salaries are forecast based on contractual obligations outlined within the collective bargaining agreements. Both the CSCA agreement ran through June 30th, 2021, and the SWERA agreement runs through June 30th, 2022. Negotiations are in progress with both of those units to get contracts finalized. The teachers agreement, SWERA agreement, runs through June 30th, 2025. What that's included there for is just to show a clear picture of how we are projecting for 22-23. We have one bargaining unit that has been out since June. We have another bargaining unit that comes out this June, and teachers that are inside of a settled contract. The non-represented employee contracts are reviewed on an annual basis. The 22-23 draft budget contains reductions of the following positions: 5 custodial aides that assisted the custodial team during the pandemic. I think it's important to just talk about that position for a couple of seconds. When the district abruptly was forced to go remote in 1920, when we came back in person September 2020, 2021, we came back to that school year with a very different understanding. It is transmissible on high-touch surfaces, it's transmissible in paper, it's transmissible everywhere and anywhere. The district took a very strong proactive step to say we were eating in classrooms, we're gonna clean every desk, we're gonna clean every doorknob, we're gonna clean every handle. And we had more custodial aides in 2021 school year. We have reduced the number in 21-22. They've been essential when I'm eating inside of classrooms. They've been essential throughout the process. However, as we are morphing back into a pre-COVID model, which is what I call it, or our traditional instructional setting, that position, that type of service is not based on the science, based on the high-touch surfaces, based on all the information. It's not as essential as it once was. And they didn't exist pre-pandemic, and I had made the recommendation that they are not part of 22-23 for the main reason, in speaking with multiple different people, we go back to our traditional custodial staffing structure. A reduction of 8.8 FTEs, certified staff, that supported the 6-foot spacing at the elementary schools. And if you recall, the 21-22 budget did not call for 6-foot spacing. That information came out very late in August to say, in order to have this and not have the masks and have full capacity and have in-person learning, long story short, you should have your elementary schools at 6-foot spacing. So we passed an emergency resolution in August. We increased the budget. We used unappropriated unassigned fund balance, quickly added fantastic staff, came in. Both elementary schools had 6-foot spacing. That contributed a tremendous amount to the ability of not having close contacts early on inside the fall. And we're going back to traditional settings. Traditional settings does not need 6-foot spacing. In addition, going back to not having 6-foot spacing inside of our lunch areas, the 7 part-time monitors that were hired for this school year in order to support second cafeterias in Wading River, middle school, high school, we are able to reduce those positions also. In addition, there was a reduction of the literacy coach. That was a position that, in light of the progress that we've made, in light of the financial responsibilities to make a balanced 22-23 budget, that was one position that was eliminated in 22-23. The budget provides funding for redefining the following areas. As Mr. Poole mentioned earlier, the elementary library structure. I've been here now for 11 years, and the librarian at the elementary level was eliminated 2 years prior to me. So it's probably been 13 years since we've had an elementary librarian. So with this retirement, it was a great opportunity instructionally to rejigger some of the resources and create a model that will allow for a shared elementary librarian between the 2 elementary schools. As Mr. Poole mentioned earlier, the nurse's office, all 4 nurses' offices will have 2 nurses now. What we currently have today, May 2022, is a health aide supporting the nurse, but during the regular school day. So eliminating the 4 health aide positions, again, a position that was added purely for the pandemic, purely related to COVID. We are going to eliminate the health aide positions, replace them with 3 nurse positions. Now, the district had pre-COVID, pre-pandemic, had 5 nurses. There was always 1 extra nurse, there was a floating nurse. If someone was out, if there was a field trip, there was always an additional person there. So with that 5th nurse, by adding 3 additional nurses and eliminating the 4 health aides, we are able to provide a plan that will allow for 2 nurses in each of our buildings. Middle school, the additional FTEs needed to move from an 8-period day to a 9-period day have also been added to the salary budget. Any questions relating to the areas that I just discussed? Because the increase year to year when it comes to the salary codes is 3.79%, a little less than $1.4 million. Salaries make up a little less than half of our budget. And as I mentioned earlier, they are the engine behind our budget. So it's should not be a surprise as to the cost. Any questions related to salary codes?
Can you just clarify the net loss and net gain of the FTEs? So we have 8.8, does that include the 1 FTE literacy coach, or that's a separate?
No, that is a separate one, yes.
And
I
then,
have broken them out, so you're looking at net FTEs, so your net FTEs, 9.8 FTEs. Okay, I'm gonna answer it a little bit differently, because on the middle school level, some of the FTEs needed are going to not be elementary certified, so there could be a little bit of a different certification needed, but on the elementary side, we have definitely 9.8 FTEs on the, I'm gonna correct that again, Ms. Anderson, I apologize. We have 0.8 of the FTEs related to secondary. So there's 9 elementary, which is the 8 and the 1 literacy coach, and 0.8 is going to balance against a roughly 2, so you could say maybe 1.2 on the secondary level. It's the partial FTEs that get certification specific, and that's as close as I could get for you today.
Thank you.
Employee benefits. The teacher's retirement system, the employee contribution rate is estimated to be 10.29%. That increase, because last year it was a little bit more than 9%, is a rate increase of 5% related to the teacher's retirement system. Now that's important to point out, because that 5% butts right up against our tax levy of 1.59%. That just that one budget code alone, you can just see the percentages. I try to articulate that the rising costs to support required expenditures that are out of the district's control sometimes rise at a percentage greater than we're able to increase our funding by. However, we did see a benefit. The employees' retirement system, the contribution rate is estimated to be 13.50%. Last year was 18.50%, so we saw a 27% reduction in this contribution percentage. So we were able to pick up approximately a $417,000 savings related to the employee retirement system contribution, and that savings was able to help us reduce the overall increase in this budget category. In addition, we anticipate that health plan premiums will increase for 2022-23. As I'm sure you recall, a few months back, I had provided support that we had budgeted last year for a 10% increase in our health benefits, and it came in at 12.28% for one of the benefit coverage areas. So 14%, we always hope. That's the first year since I've been doing the budget here in Shoreham that it ever came in at even close to what we budgeted. It's always come in lower. You don't want to be on the short side. Do I want it to be at 14%? No. Some chatter out there says it could be as high as 16%. The comment from the insurance provider says someone's going to be paying for these related costs.
What do you think the driving factor is for that? Now that we're coming
You know,
to the end of the
I will
pandemic?
definitely tell you one of the biggest driving factors, not by talking to the insurance company, but by talking to some of our providers for our special education program, is just the salary costs related to staffing levels, how much, what it takes to hire a staff member now for them to work, number one, I know is huge, and number two, the cost for workers' compensation across the board has gone up more than 20 to 30%. So I do know that providers that are charging for services are charging a higher fee, which in turn is getting passed on to the insurance company that has to pay that higher fee inside the negotiated prices, which in turn get passed on to us from the premiums. Those are two rock solid, I've attended webinars virtually that speak to those 2 points. They have not factored in the cost related to the pandemic-related expenses yet. It has not. We'll probably see something like that in 2023. That's why they're estimating it could be as high as 14%.
Not to be on the spot with this math, but what does each point equal as far as an increase?
Roughly $1 million. What is each one?
So if you go from
1%?
13% to 14%, what's, or 14 to 15, or 13 to 12, what is that extra additional 1%?
100,000, 100 to 120,000. The increase in employee benefits, taking into consideration that reduction of $417,000, is a dollar change of a little bit less than $1 million, which is a 4.69% increase inside of this benefit category. This benefit category is 26.23% of the budget, and the salaries is 45.91% of the budget. So the sum of these two categories make up approximately a little less than 75% of the total budget. Any questions related to salaries or benefits? So now looking at the budget as a whole, we had talked about two expense categories. I had mentioned earlier that the year-to-year change is 2.95%, but now we come to what does the district's revenue budget look like in order to cover that expenditure budget? As I mentioned earlier, the tax levy is increasing by 1.59%. State aid is increasing by a little less than 12%. We have received our first 50% of our restoration of our foundation aid. That's approximately 1.2 million of that $1.6 million. So we did see a large increase inside of state aid. There's other additions in there in state aid related to transportation aid, expense-driven aids, but we cover the revenue budget on April 12th. But we have seen a large increase inside of state aid, but as you could see, we're also seeing large increases of costs out of our control. Other local revenue is a slight decrease. The slight decrease relates primarily to interest income. As we continually used our bond dollars, we anticipate using our capital reserve dollars. Because our capital reserve money is coming down, we continually lose our ability to raise interest. So we don't project the interest rates to be as high. That's the slight decrease there. And with regard to the use of reserves and fund balance, we are projecting using an additional $655,000 of appropriated fund balance. So that's surplus funds out of the 21-22 budget. We plan on using a little bit more than $4.8 million. The 1.7 million, if we go back to the end of the 1920 school year, when the governor at the time for 2021 was projecting possible state aid shortfalls, no idea what we're doing, no idea if there will be money, not be money, we took the savings from the 1920 school year when we closed and went to remote learning. So we didn't do field trips, we didn't do athletics. There was additional money at the end of that school year. The decision made at that time to protect and give the most flexibility was to go above the allowable 4%, go above that cap of unappropriated unassigned fund balance of the 1.7 million. That's what we did at the end of 1920. We put that money back quickly at 21-22. Quickly said to the taxpayer, we're giving it back to you to support your program. That 1.7 was intentionally a one-time, a one transaction, a pure anomaly that hopefully we never see again of closing down a school and going remote and having savings. So that's why there's nothing to offset that with in 22-23.
Did we ever get any type of like audit or comment from the state that, hey, we're over the 4%?
We got it from our external auditors, and just a matter of what month the phone is ringing to say the controller's coming in. Our cycle's up this year. They should be coming to pay us a visit. I could tell you, I don't know the exact percentage, but a large number of schools in New York State went above the 4% for that year. And from what I'm hearing of other districts that are having the controller's audit, they're making the comment, you shouldn't have done that, but here's our explanation why, and it's an understood reason that there was so much uncertainty. And if you did the right thing, and using that term, I'm choosing that, that's my personal way of saying it, if you gave it back to the taxpayer the following year, there was never an intent to take from the taxpayer. There was an intent to protect the district's program in the 2021 school year. That's what the protection was. It was never to take from the taxpayer, and we proved that by 21-22, making a separate line item and handing it back to the taxpayer, clearly showing them, here's your money back. With regard to use of reserves, the employee retirement system reserve, we are increasing by a little bit less than $400,000. Teachers retirement system, we are using for the first time $500,000. The unemployment reserve, just want to touch on this for a second. In 21-22, when we developed the 21-22 budget, we had no 6-foot spacing, we had no COVID model, we had all of the staff that we had in 2021 when we opened up Briarcliff and we were 6-foot district wide and we had staff. When we built the 21-22 budget, we didn't know how many of those staff were going to find jobs, so we had to budget for the possible exposure for the related unemployment costs. As we're going through the 21-22 school year, the numbers are showing we did not have a large payout of unemployment claims. Matter of fact, we had very, very little. So you see a reduction. The unemployment-related use of the reserve relates primarily to the budgeted value of what you think you might have exposure to due to layoffs. Since we do have a number of positions that are being accessed this school year, we did do the calculation again, and we're showing that we believe our exposure is $480,000 more than our traditional number. So we are applying that amount from the unemployment reserve. It is a reduction, but it's not a known expenditure. It's our maximum amount that we believe our exposure is. Does that make sense with the unemployment reserve? Someone have a question with that? And workers' compensation reserve, as I mentioned to you earlier, the premiums are just increasing faster than reasonable as far as I'm concerned. It's a required payment that we have to make, and to cover that increase, we have a reserve as opposed to passing it on to the taxpayer. We are increasing our reliance on the workers' compensation reserve funding by an additional $250,000. So what you see here is a balanced budget. You see the expenditure budget, and then you see the corresponding revenue budget that goes with it. Again, state aid is based on the governor's executive budget. We historically, it's always changed on April 1st. Historically, it's always gone up a little bit. Hopefully, good fortune comes and it goes up a lot, like it did last year. But my good fortune might have already come in with the 1.6 million. Any questions? As we go through the budget process further, we'll see more categories. We'll cover them in more detail. There's no questions. I'm going to move on to proposition number 2. May 2022 capital projects proposition. During the December 16th Space and Facilities meeting, a number of potential capital projects were presented. After an extensive discussion on each project, the recommendation of the members of the committee was to renovate 2 high school art classrooms, room 116 and room 118, and renovate the high school auxiliary gym into a physical health and wellness center. This work will be funded from funds within the tax reduction reserve, which contains the prior year state aid funds. There will be no additional cost to the taxpayer. So supporting these capital projects, no additional increase in your taxes, and it will generate a new and improved instructional spaces. Total cost of the project is not to exceed $2,898,040. At this point, where we are, similar to all past capital projects, preliminary design meetings have taken place with input from the Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction and Assessment, the building principal, athletic director, art and physical education teachers and coaches. Once the funding is approved by the voters, then the final plans will be completed. We continue to refine what the expectations are. We know that we have a parameter. Now it's time to finalize the particular details for each of the projects. High school art rooms, the casework, ceilings, walls, etc. It's a full renovation. We are going to gut the 2 classrooms. They're there from when the building was first built. The ceilings, the casework, they're all original to the building. Over the past 3 years, an average of 114 ninth grade students have taken at least 1 class in an art room. And over the past 3 years, an average of 209 high school students take at least 1 class in an art room. The two rooms, the following classes are held in either one of the rooms. You have creative crafts, which is advanced crafts, ceramics 1, ceramics 2, studio art, which could come into ceramics 1, ceramics 2, drawing and painting 1, drawing and painting 2, AP studio art, portfolio prep, and introduction to fashion design 2, as well as peer mentoring. High school art rooms, a project scope, remove all the existing casework, sinks, drop ceiling, light fixtures, HVAC ductwork, floor tile, interior walls, reconfigure the interior space to maximize functionality. Smart furniture will replace fixed casework when possible, and the renovated space will have a direct impact on the student learning environment. As we saw with the renovated spaces, whether it was during the science lab project, whether it was the Wading River bond work, or the Miller Avenue bond work, or the middle school work, when the students come back to a renovated space, it is a breath of fresh air and just breathes brand new life into the program.
Mr. Akiri, just to go back real quick, that visual art pathway, so I know up above you mentioned ninth graders, but that pathway is over a series of years, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So that impacts sophomores, as they go forward.
It does. I just was trying to point out.
No, I
that
understand.
from
For my clarity, I wanted to make sure I understood, yeah.
Definitely correct. I actually took those 2 pictures directly out of the course catalog, because as I was trying to understand it myself, I figured it was easier to take whatever the students are actually seeing, whatever the parents are seeing, to actually show them these are the pathways. It's similar to when we did the science labs over, to show them how many classes a student could take. You have a ninth grader that comes into that space. they could be in an art room at least 1 to 2 periods a day for all 4 of their years. So it's really going to get heavy use, and it's going to see a great return. It isn't like I'm renovating a space where there's only 40 kids going in it 1 period a day.
And the visual's good, the fact that you're showing it that way. We're talking about art, so, right?
That was a good idea, thanks. I wish I thought of that. I didn't, you're right. So to show you a couple of pictures, a lot of the people in the audience, the people that are watching it at home might not have been inside the high school art classrooms. So the purpose was not to grab a specific picture that was worse than the other. This is a depiction of what high school art classroom 116 looks like. It's the space. It is original, the ceiling tiles, the floor, the configuration. High school art classroom 118, you can see there's no doors on the cabinets, there's just curtains. They've done a wonderful job. They do great work. The staff in there are committed. The students are even equally as committed, but it's time to bring the space forward. It's time to invest. So
I
again,
think it's important to remember too, right, when we did the bond work, I know the bond committee had identified a lot of work that was just needed, and we wouldn't be able to get done through that one bond. I know the district has done some work through capital projects in itself outside of the bond. This is another example of some of those projects that didn't make it into the bond originally, that just, obviously by looking at them,
it's definitely time. And then again, I continue to stress that the purpose of prior year state aid, when the district won that award, was to mitigate taxes and for voter-approved capital projects. So the spirit of the money, the spirit of the intent of not getting their fair share of state aid across the number of years the claim was for, now that we're using that money to put it back into the buildings, and it's going to see at least a 15-year return of students, minimum, are going to be in these spaces, you're using it for what the spirit of that money was. The second project relates to Renovate High School Auxiliary Gym to a physical health and wellness center. The auxiliary gym is directly linked to the lifetime activities strand of the physical education program. The primary components of this program are Pilates, yoga, weight training, and cardio exercises. Since the Lifetime Activities program began in 2018-19 school year, there has been a steady rise in the popularity of the program. In the current school year, there are 256 students that are enrolled in the Lifetime Activities program. In addition to the physical education program, the athletic program could also benefit from renovating the auxiliary gym. The Physical Health and Wellness Center with the proper equipment is critical to the development of a successful strength and conditioning program that could benefit student athletes. Over the past 3 years, an average of 49% of our high school students, approximately 330 students, participate on either a varsity or junior varsity athletic team on an annual basis. I had worked with Mr. Pugliese, Mr. Passamonte together. They were very helpful in pulling some of the data together I could renovate the space. I could do that. I can't tell you how many students are going to use the art rooms, how many students are going to use the spaces. So in that dialogue, a lot was brought to my own attention to say, wow, there really is a lot of use for these spaces. It's just not a simple classroom. All grades use these spaces. So many different grades are going to benefit from the renovation of these areas. The plan is to renovate the existing auxiliary gym previously used for wrestling and other activities. As we know, the wrestling center has been relocated. That facility is built, well used. So this is no longer a primary function for wrestling. This auxiliary gym will function as a physical health and wellness center. The Physical Health and Wellness Center will serve as a multi-use space, both for physical education and athletics. The new space will have a new HVAC system with air conditioning, a new sound system, interlocking rubber floor in the section where the fixed equipment is located, folding partition wall, set of perimeter wall pads, and the infrastructure to allow for the connection of a mobile smartboard to support instruction. We had considered many different variables of a fixed screen, and Mr. Pliesi was very clear on it's much better. The portable rolling smartboard is much more functional for that particular setup. The sound is better, the visual is better, and that's why we chose to go with that particular connection.
Sorry, is this space going to be used for testing?
It is definitely possible that the area without the fixed equipment could be used for other instructional programs that would see the need for that particular space. Yes, similar to our cafeteria, could be used for testing. Similar to the point where the 2 pods behind me here were actually used for testing during COVID. There's definitely flexible space that the district could take advantage of. Where the fixed equipment is, there will never be an opportunity to use that for that area for testing. But once we change to the new HVAC equipment that will locate the items on top of the roof versus inside of the space, it'll be a lot quieter. And one of the biggest complaints if people are testing inside the main gym, especially when the weather's warm, those units are inside of the gym. So if there is the opportunity where the number of students would fit in the particular area where there is not the fixed equipment and it can be used for testing, I don't see any reason why the building principal would not take advantage of that option.
Recall there being a lot of damage around the perimeter walls when it was the wrestling room when the kids were testing, and there were tables and chairs set up that people weren't as respectful spaces that they don't typically use.
One of the things I will say to that is always a possibility. When I first joined here in 2010, from what the science labs looked like to after we renovated them and saw the student population that currently occupies them, as well as the staff, I don't see the type of abuse of the furniture that ever existed compared to the old stuff. I see that throughout all of the district's bond work. The students, the staff, the outside organizations using our facilities have treated it truly with great respect and care. And I want to hope. I look at the cafeteria tables, look at the cafeteria itself. They really do take pride. So I do think that the mantra for that bond project was restore the pride. I think it did that and then some. So hopefully that won't be the case here. Hopefully we never go back to those times.
And this is the space that we previously used for voting, which we no longer use for that, right? And we won't be.
That decision has not been finalized yet.
Okay.
Voting has last year moved to the large gym. The Board of Elections really prefers the large gym. They like the layout better. They like not coming into the building. They like coming in one set of doors, going out another set of doors. I don't know how that's going to work for this May. I will have to work with Mrs. Mahoney on that for the Board of Elections. That should be coming up soon. But I don't foresee this space ever being used for voting if it's inside of the high school voting. I see us going to the large gym. It just worked out. They never came into the building, which is something from a security standpoint at the bare minimum for the May budget vote. Having so many people inside of the building was always a deep security risk for me. So having them enter the gym and exit the gym and never come into the building was probably something that should have been thought of in the past. This was just probably how it was always done, but then COVID pushed us into the larger portion of the gym, and I don't see the need to ever go back to utilizing the auxiliary gym.
Hey Glenn, when we closed the old fitness center and moved into the high school, we purchased new equipment. Is that gonna be sufficient for this space? Have we considered adding additional equipment as part of this renovation?
We have definitely considered adding some additional equipment. One of the goals that we have, that Mr. Poole and I have spoken to Mr. Passamonte about, now that we're going to be accelerating, returning to eating inside the cafeterias, we are hoping to return even our existing auxiliary gym that we have. I do have the rubber flooring from the previous fitness center. I do have the equipment that we set up in A101, 102 downstairs, which was a temporary fitness center. We do still have a couple of pieces of equipment that are, they've been in storage now for about 3 years. We want to see how they function when we take them out, but we really want to get the existing auxiliary gym online as a, call it a temporary fitness wellness center right now with our existing equipment. And then that's going to get us a start maybe even before this school year's out. But at the minimum, have it set in place for September 2022. In addition, we do have funding plan for the 23-24 budget in order to purchase equipment. We'll see if there's the opportunity with equipment dollars in 21-22 to purchase any new equipment that could go in this space, but put it inside the space for September 2022. Because it's still going to be available to us. Now that it's not a cafeteria, the plan was always to have it available for this school year. That was our original plan until August, when it was, if you want to have lunch, you need to be 6 feet apart. So we quickly rethought the plan, spread out to the auxiliary gym. So we do have some equipment, but we will have to purchase additional equipment to fully outfit this, to fully outfit the space. The proposition language that I'm going to get to momentarily shows you that, assuming funds exist, there is funding in the proposition. There is language within the proposition to allow any excess funding to be used to help to outfit the incidentals of the space.
There is still committee work, architect work on both of those spaces, so before we finalize any of those plans, we'll certainly come back with some visuals and what the vision of the final product will be for those two.
Yep.
3 rooms.
And one last question, Glenn. Why is it every time I talk?
I think someone's doing the gong to you, because that's not me.
It's not me. So these projects are state aidable?
Right now, I'm going to answer that by saying the art rooms should definitely qualify for aid. This space, because I have a large gym and there is a wrestling center, we did hire in 2021 a firm to help me do the building aid unit calculation. They've been working with the state education department, who is severely understaffed. What should take 6 weeks is, I'm into my 17th month and I still don't have an answer. I'm confident on the art rooms. They should be aidable. I will have to continue to work on this project and get that answer. It's going to be, I could tell you that Mr. Meinster does wonders with working numbers and working space. He was instrumental in getting the elementary schools, all the spaces aidable. If it's possible to be aidable, we will get it to be aidable. It's all based on the number of students related to the number of instructional spaces that you have available to them. So when we make the pitch that our lifetime activities program could only be done in this space, and why it doesn't fit in a regular large gymnasium because there's another gym class going on inside that space, that's going to be our case to try to make it aidable. But that's based on student enrollment, student schedules, all stuff that Mr. Meinster has worked on before that. As I said, he did wonders for the elementary. Everything we did at the 2 elementary buildings turned out to be aidable. I'm confident that if it's possible, we're going to get it. And these are just a couple of pictures for those of you that aren't in the spaces. These are the two HVAC units that are being removed. They are original to the space, and they're going to be new equipment mounted on top that will allow for outside air exchange, meeting the new requirements, as well as air conditioning. If there's no questions, I'm just going to read for one of many times the ballot language. Proposition number 2, May 2022 capital projects proposition. Shall the Board of Education of the Shoreham-Wading River Central School District be authorized pursuant to Chapter 298 of the Laws of New York of 2008 to use funds at no additional cost to the taxpayer from the tax reduction reserve, which was established by the Board of Education on June 17, 2008, via resolution number 0708-216, and contains the prior year's state aid funds for the following purposes and projects. 1, renovate high school art classroom number 116. 2, renovate high school art classroom number 118. And number 3, renovate the high school auxiliary gym into a physical health and wellness center, and any ancillary work, related work, furnishings, and equipment that are incidental to said projects in an amount not to exceed $2,898,040.
Such a round number.
I play in a game of exacts. You know that. Tonight, we covered employee salaries, employee benefits. March 15th, we're going to be covering categories transportation, debt and transfers, special education, district-wide expenses. March 22nd, 2022, we're going to cover facilities category, technology, curriculum and staff development, athletics, community programs, health services, and personnel. And on, we're hopeful that the governor adopts the budget on or about April 1st. April 12th, we will present to you the final revenue budget, which should have the final state aid numbers in it. And on that same evening, the budget adoption will also be on that date. As I get more information from the PTOs and the local civic associations, I'll be showing community meetings, whatever those dates are. They haven't been finalized yet.
Quick question.
Sure.
Apparently for the board and for, I don't have the 15th calendar for the district.
I apologize. The 15th was added onto the calendar. It was revised from the Board of Education meeting calendar. I'll add it to personal calendars.
One last piece regarding legislative priorities, as it was mentioned earlier. These were the categories that the Legislative Committee continues to make a priority. No other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Accrued, on behalf of the board for all your work in drafting this budget. And not only do you have the fiscal fitness of our district at the forefront, but also all the offerings that you maintain for our students and add on. Really appreciate it.
You're very, very welcome, but please definitely know, I gather a lot of information. Without the help of every person, it would never come to this.
Thank you to all. Next up, we have our votes and resolutions. We have the approval of January 5th minutes. Can I get a motion? Mr. Smith departed at 6:55, so just abstain from that. Get a motion? Yeah. Any discussion? Okay to vote? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Ms. Anderson, can you just repeat the motions? I
Sure.
didn't hear you.
Megan? Tom?
Thank you.
No discussion or questions. Vote in favor? 4? Abstain? 5? Abstain? 1? Thank you. Approval of January 18th. We were all there. Can I get a motion? Henry, second Jim. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 6-0. Approval of January 27th, Meg and Rob absent. Can I get a motion? Jim, second Tom. Any discussion or questions? Vote all in favor? 5, abstain? 1, 0. Can we accept the policies for the second reading? We have 1800, 1801, 1925, and then 1925 E1, E2. Can I get a motion? Megan? Second Mike? Any discussion or questions?
I have a question on the general review of policies and converting to this. What's the process going forward? I know we had some cancellations of some policy meetings.
Yeah, so, thank you. As of right now, the process is we're moving into the 2000 section. The process that was being held before is that administration would meet weekly and review a few policies, a handful of policies, and then every other week, the Board of Education Policy Committee will come together and review those policies that were previously reviewed by administration with suggestions. I know that there was discussion at meetings as to maybe change a date or a time so that more Board of Education members can attend the meetings. And so the meetings were put, temporarily on hold, after the vacation break. And they'll be continuing the last week in March. So we're hoping to have a good amount of policies to start reviewing at that next meeting, and it's going into the 2000s category.
I think one of the questions is for how to make those policy committee meetings more accessible for more trustees. I know we sent something home to the board in a Friday update related to that, so certainly need additional discussion. I think at the next meeting with the current policy committee, we'll continue that conversation and see if there's either changing back to a policy committee once a month, maybe with a later start date, offering the ability for a trustee to Zoom into that meeting if they can't get there in person. But at the next meeting in March in the policy committee, we'll talk further about what are some options to increase trustee accessibility. And we had an ambitious schedule to try to get through all the policies quickly, so 2 meetings a month. But certainly we're making good progress in that full review of the policy catalog. And, making more accessible is important. So we'll come back to the board after that next committee with what some of those options could be.
Mrs. Mahoney, just to confirm, the next meeting is the 31st to discuss that? Thank
Yes,
you.
that's correct.
Thank you.
Whatever is discussed, I'm not on the committee, but I would love to attend if necessary, so whatever you guys discuss as things, I guess, however you guys looking to revise it to make it more accessible to other trustees, just kind of fill us in.
Oh, absolutely.
Or ask for our feedback, whether or not we're
Absolutely.
accessible around, okay.
We'll definitely share with the board what the preferred path might be to move forward.
Need a vote? All in favor? 6-0. We have 2 Board of Education resolutions, 21-22-190 and 191. It's okay to take them out of the block. Can I get a motion to approve these 2 resolutions? Megan, second Henry. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 6-0. We have 4 curriculum and instruction resolutions, 21-22-192, and that's through 195. Okay to take these as a block? Can I get a motion? Tom, second Mike. Any discussion or questions?
I had a question on 21-22-194, the 8th grade field trip, and more of a general question. Since we were doing these trips annually, I'm just wondering, are we back to the normal agenda, more or less, or are we doing anything still different with this particular trip?
Unless Mr. Meinster has that?
Are you asking in terms of itinerary for the trip?
Yeah, yeah, generally speaking, are
The
they still doing the
itinerary-
same general
Yep,
itinerary?
the itinerary will be the same itinerary that it has been in past years.
Okay,
Absolutely.
great. Sounds wonderful.
Yeah, we're excited to be able to get that back up and
Right,
running.
sure.
Okay to vote? Favor? 6-0. We have one business and operation resolution, 21-22-196, regarding the voter proposition language. Can I get a motion? Tom, second Henry. Any discussion or questions? All in favor? 6-0. Can I get a motion to approve the personnel agenda? Tom, second Megan. Any discussion or questions? Okay to vote, all in favor? 6-0. We have one communication from Mrs. Mahoney.
Thank you. It's just an announcement. There are 2 Board of Education trustee seats that are open for term July 1, 2022 to June 30th, 2025. Board election candidate packets are available for pickup in the district clerk's office starting March 8th, 2022, which is today. The last date to submit a candidate packet is Monday, April 18th, 2022.
Any additional discussion? Just regarding the policy committee, because figured we might as well discuss it now. Instead of having at the policy meeting, we can further discuss it, but would everybody be okay if we just made it a Zoom meeting? In person, you can attend if able, but offer it via Zoom. Having the ability to continue to meet every 2 weeks enables us to get through the new policy manual in 2 years. If we meet once a month, that extends it to 4 years, which is okay if that's what we want, but we made a goal of 2 years. And so since administration needs to meet once a week on this internally and then twice a month, to extend it into the evening hours is problematic, but to offer it via Zoom at the same time, is that twice a week, or twice a month rather, is that possible? Is that good?
What is the advantage of having Zoom as well as having in person? Only because,
So
to be honest with you, if I'm coming to a meeting, not really dedicated enough to just take the meeting, all be in the meeting. Sometimes people get better when they're in the same room.
Yeah, I mean,
I'd be a little insulted if some
yeah.
guy sitting back, having a cup of coffee on their couch, and I'm.
so, I mean, the advantage to meeting in person is obvious, right? But if we can't have, the same level of attendance, then offering it at a Zoom option enables us to maintain that schedule.
But are people not attending because they
Commitments.
not attending because I don't understand? Like, what's the
Yeah,
reason, Lauren?
Yeah, I'm wondering if, when people have work obligations and, traveling is from a distance might this might increase. I'm just a little concerned with, putting this next to a board meeting with just the capacity for us to focus on the board agenda.
If someone's at work or they're traveling, are they,
Yeah.
are they really going to be able to car and be productive?
I mean, I don't know if if you're able to take a break, or if it's just, stay at the office and instead of factoring the commute time in. I don't know.
I think it's important to try. The policy committee is a big commitment, and I think it's important to give it a try.
The good news is, I mean, we all agreed that we can rotate, so there are 3 board members that are, that serve on the policy committee, but, the expectation to attend twice a month may be lofty, so, I know you've stepped in once, Mike, I've stepped in, even though we don't serve on the committee, but, maybe others have too, but I don't, there seems to be 2 options here. We can delay it or keep up on the schedule and make it more accessible.
So what's impacted me is I've been unclear as to when meetings are actually being hosted, who's signed up to attend. So I'm not sure if I'm needed or if I am or if I'm not needed. So that's been, I haven't gotten involved because I don't really know what's the cadence. I know it's in that other Google Classroom. I've never adapted to that Google Classroom, so it's not on our calendars. So I have no idea where it's at. So for me, it's not existent. Just putting it out there. So if you need help, happy to help. I just don't know where it is or how I should get involved. So I'm just putting it.
Okay, so just adding it to like our Friday update schedule?
No, that wouldn't help.
No?
Somehow putting it in our calendar, these Google calendars, so I know there's a committee meeting. Are people signed on? If the 3 members can't make it, Stephanie, somehow we just need someone to know we have no one attending next week who can attend. Or signing up in advance and knowing that months ahead, so we can plan our schedules.
Mrs. Mahoney, I know that you've been sending out emails and just noting who's attending. Is it possible to just put it in the Google Calendar, in the memo box, just write the attendees?
Yeah, absolutely, and I can also add just the entire board to the policy committee meeting that's scheduled, and that way it pops up on every, I'm assuming, Mr. Sheridan, are you talking your Outlook calendar?
I'm talking my Outlook calendar.
Okay, so I can add the entire board to the Outlook calendar, and that way every board member will know, it'll be on their calendar when the policy committee meetings are, and when I get the attendees responses, I'll put them in that memo box, and that way, whoever, I will continue to send out the emails because usually there's only 1 or 2 that respond, so.
And I believe we're able to respond, so
Yeah.
as soon as a response happens, the rest of the board can.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I guess my request would be if you do that and you don't see 3 acceptances for the meeting, then send out a reminder that we need, you need a board participation. I'm not sure what the cadence should be. That's what's not working. So, in my opinion, if you want to help.
All right, so can we move forward with continuing to meet twice a month? And, we can just try for in-person and maybe with a different calendar approach, not need to do a Zoom yet, and then we can go from there?
I think so, yeah, because I'm still not sure what day of the week it is. What times is it? You're saying during the day. What time during the day is it? Standard cadence we've got?
Yes, it's every other Thursday, and we have been meeting at 4. It is in the same week as the Board of Ed meetings, typically?
Typically, it is the same week as the Board of Ed meetings. Some meetings, depending on the Board of Ed meeting, it does get pushed off, but yes.
Okay, and I don't want to put you also in a position, Mrs. Mahoney, of having to, kind of hound, this is a Board of Education initiative, but I appreciate your flexibility and kind of helping us figure out what is going to work to get, ideally 2, ideally 3, but, ideally we don't have just one trustee there. All right. Any additional discussion?
I just had a question. I know that annually Eastern Suffolk BOCES has their board vote, and
Mhm.
typically we get some input on who those tentative candidates are. I received one tonight. Are we expected to receive others? I know in the past we've seen a little synopsis of their history.
When I receive the emails usually it comes through via email through BOCES, who their candidates are, who's running, and information about them. What you received tonight is just a letter, personally from one candidate who's running. But usually when those emails come through, I will forward them through to you. So I'll check to see how many emails I've gotten, and I'll re-forward if that is the case.
Okay.
To get
And
more
do you know
info.
when the vote actually is for Eastern
The
Suffolk?
vote actually, yes, it is on, I believe, let me get back into my calendar.
That'll be our vote, right, when we're voting, April?
No, actually, our budget, usually it does fall on the same night as the budget adoption. Our budget adoption is on April 12th. The BOCES vote is on April 26th.
So we as board members would be voting on April 26th then?
For the BOCES vote,
Yes.
yes.
And so would it be possible to get their history or their resume prior to that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We don't have any comments from residents here. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting? And Megan? Sorry. Okay to vote? 6-0. Thank you.